Today's webinar is all about 3D planning and design workflows with two of my favorite tools, SketchUp and CityEngine. My name's Brooks Patrick. I actually work here at Esri's California office on the 3D team. And I also have a background in landscape architecture and planning. So I happen to know from experience that working in 3D has always been labor intensive, and this is exceptionally true at city and neighborhood plan level. We hope to use this time to focus in on some quick wins that will help you when working at this scale. And to help articulate this further, we've invited two amazing guests. So we will cover real-world scenarios frequently faced by planning and design professionals in their work, and explore tech remedies related to the integration of SketchUp and CityEngine to streamline the design process, including the creation of large 3D city models, the effective use of your SketchUp asset library, and we'll even be touching on how to leverage emerging capabilities in browser-based 3D web scenes and virtual reality, and, of course, how to apply this to your next project. The need for the creation of a 3D environment is clear. A 3D city model is a needed asset at almost every level of planning. But there are many paths to take. 3D city models come in many different flavors. It can be with or without textures. You can use existing data like meshes or point clouds generated from drones or oblique aerial imagery. Creating the 3D city model is only the first step. After this, it's about visualizing and mapping real-world context. For example, new developments, zoning regulations, land use, or just points of interest. The city model becomes a canvas for telling your story, for visualizing different conditions, both how it is today, but also to showcase potential future development. And at Esri, we're moving more and more into a state where we can even have real-time interaction with the 3D city model, so as to have a complete situational awareness. There are some key takeaways from today's webinar that I want to make sure everyone can grab. There are new data sources that are enabling the creation of our existing context fast. At the same time, tools like CityEngine and SketchUp are focused on providing more accessible and more flexible 3D working environments. And emerging technologies like procedural 3D modeling are becoming the norm, especially for modeling futures at large scales. To highlight these points further, we'll cover 4 key scenarios associated with creating 3D context from available GIS data, the interoperability between SketchUp and CityEngine for automating the addition of complex 3D detail to site plans, the use of SketchUp asset libraries right within CityEngine, and the creation and interoperability of architecturally important buildings, what we would sometimes call hero buildings, whether it's existing or proposed into the model. And before I hand it over to Devin to show you where to get started, I'd like to ask our attendees a quick survey question. We'll be posting a few polls during the webinar, and so when the time comes, you'll see an interactive question appear on the screen, giving you the ability to submit your answer. What we'll do is tally the numbers in real time, and our friends at Directions Magazine will share them back with us. So, Barbara, if you don't mind posting the first question. We'd like to know, what deliverables does 3D software support in your professional work? And there are a couple choices here: perspective renderings, 3D interactive scenes, video renderings, virtual reality, others, or you're not yet using 3D.
So we're giving folks a chance to make these selections. And just a reminder to everyone, as you're making these selections, yes, we are recording the webinar, and we will make it available to everyone in the next day or so after the webinar. Just keep an eye on your inbox, and we'll be sharing that information with you. All right, so let's have a look. We've got 3D interactive scenes coming in first place, and close behind it, I'm not using 3D. Well, these folks are in the right spot, Brooks. And then perspective renderings coming in next. Excellent. Thanks, folks. It's good to know.
Very good to know. Thank you. So I'd like to hand it over now to Devin Lavigne. Devin Lavigne is principal and co-founder of Houseal Lavigne and Associates. And just as a reminder, we'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar. So make sure to write them down, enter them through the chat window, and we'll hopefully get to them all. Over to you, Devin.
Great. Thank you, Brooks. So yeah, I'm Devin Lavigne. I'm a principal and co-founder of Houseal Lavigne Associates, and I'm also a SketchUp Pro. And there's a visiting professionals program at SketchUp. I'm one of 20 people that is available to institutions for educational purposes. And so if you don't know about the program, you can head over there. And thank you to SketchUp for creating this portrait of me that's available. A little bit about Houseal Lavigne Associates. We're a community planning firm, urban design and economic development. We're based in Chicago. We do a lot of work really all over the country. In 2014, our firm received an American Planning Association award, a National Planning Excellence Award for the top emerging planning and design firm. And the award was given to us for our use of technology and outreach, and 3D has been a big part of that. And so a hallmark of our firm has always been really the graphic nature of our plan documents and how we integrate graphics and technology into a planning process. Some of the key things I'd like you to take away from my presentation here today is really just the need to work quickly. Whether you're a consultant that is billing hours or in the public sector, the quicker you can finish a project, the more time you can spend either taking something else on, or you'll see in some of the examples I'll show developing additional options. So working quickly is sort of important. Procedural modeling is becoming the norm. Hopefully you'll see from my slides and the case studies I run through just the power of procedural modeling. And if you don't know what it is, I think you're in for a little bit of a treat. Third thing, just making sure you're using the right tools. So using CityEngine for the right work and using SketchUp for the right work. And I'll walk through over the course of this presentation 4 different case studies and ways that we are using here at Houseal Lavigne SketchUp and CityEngine together. And right off the bat here, I'll give a big thank you to Nick Davis. Nick is a principal associate at our firm, and a lot of the SketchUp work that you'll see here in this presentation is courtesy of Nick. So thank you for your work here. So using CityEngine for procedural context is the first thing I'd like to highlight. And so these are some of the older graphics that we developed in SketchUp, and I still love the look of these graphics, but I start to look at the buildings that kind of set up this scene, and they are sort of real blocky. They're extruded masses, whether they're homes or commercial buildings, and just through some plugins inside of SketchUp, we were able to early on develop these kind of contextual models. And the first time we used CityEngine here at our firm was to give these contextual models a little more realism. I mean, not a lot, but and let me walk you through sort of what I'm talking about. So here is a traditional downtown, and we've just randomly extruded these buildings. And look simple and look blocky. And what we did is we wrote a quick rule. And what it does is it adds a parapet and air conditioners. So you can look off to the left. You can see we're going to randomly extrude this building anywhere from 5 meters to 15 meters in height. We're going to offset a border anywhere from 25 centimeters to 50 centimeters for a parapet, and then we're going to randomly extrude that parapet. And then lastly, we have this AC zone where we scatter across the surface roughly 1 air conditioner for every 150 square meters. So the net result is a contextual model that looks a little more like a traditional downtown. And so as a perspective rendering, it gives our images a little more context. Moving over, this is sort of the same scene. This is a neighborhood adjacent to this site, and these are single-family homes, detached garages. So again, just that simple extrusion doesn't do a lot for the context, the residential context. So a simple rule that we have here is called extrude house, and we can drag this onto shape files of any residential footprint. And what this does is it randomly extrudes a house anywhere from 2.9 meters or 10 feet to 8 meters or 35 feet. And then we're also going to randomize the roof. So 20% of these roofs will be pyramid, 40% will be hip, and the other 40% will get a gable roof. And so applying that rule to the neighborhood, we start to see something that does resemble a neighborhood. And so back in, I think 2013 was our first foray into CityEngine in a project. This is a suburb west of Chicago. We're doing a town center plan for them, and the green area is really the focus of the study area, and all those white homes is the residential context of this larger site. And so, yeah, it was our sort of our toe in the pool. It wasn't a huge dive into CityEngine, but you can see here all the SketchUp work was augmented by a contextual model where we brought building footprints into CityEngine and kicked out residential roofs and residential forms to bring back into SketchUp. So moving on, sort of the next way we integrate both CityEngine and SketchUp is to apply procedural detail to a SketchUp mass. So this is a site, it's a vacant industrial site just southeast of a pretty urbanized town center. And a city came to us with the need to explore redevelopment options for this site. And first thing, and I'd recommend this for everything, is to take the pen and paper and start to figure out the plan for the site. It's hard just to jump into SketchUp or CityEngine without any type of first course of action. And so these are Nick's images. Nick hand sketched out 6 different concepts. Presented them to our client, who narrowed it down to really 3 preferred, but there was one that she wanted to see visualized. So bringing it into SketchUp, just placing this as a image inside of SketchUp, we're quickly able to mass it out. And this building here right in the foreground, you can see has a curved wall, and we wanted to add detail to that, and that can be a little challenging inside of SketchUp to place components on a curved surface, and there was a lot of detail that needed to be added to all of these different components. And so Nick passed along the building footprints to me. I brought them into CityEngine, and we've developed a rule inside of CityEngine called a detailed building generator. So I can take a building footprint and drag my rule onto it. And immediately, this is sort of the default 1.5-story building. We save different styles, so this is a mixed-use building. And we're able to customize every detail of this building, whether it's the width of a partition, the types of building windows, if there's any articulation, and the number of air conditioners is a slider. So if we see a roof that just doesn't look right, we can click on the slider and just start to increase the number of AC units on the top. The windows is something that are now all procedurally modeled. So this is something I call an urban mix. We can switch that to a prairie style window. We could change the width of the mullion in the window. And one of the newer features in CityEngine, we had handles. So if we wanted to make this a taller building, we can just grab onto a handle and drag it up. And you see the procedural modeling starts to add the detail to every single floor. You get a tall building like this, it starts to look like a gigantic wall or mass. You want to articulate it. The rule that we have here, we can start to articulate that facade. So we can set it back 2.5 feet, or if we wanted to set it back 5 feet. And if there's enough space in there, it'll draw the window for us. So really great rule, saves us a ton of time, allows us to quickly generate buildings that we can now move back and forth between CityEngine and SketchUp. So here's that building dropped into the SketchUp model, rendered in shader light, and then presented to the client. And we were able to move through this phase so quickly that in addition to giving the client one option, we actually had enough time and budget to give her a second option. So CityEngine helped us there, moving through, adding detail to that mass. Procedural detail for a SketchUp plan. This is something we really just have started to do this just before Christmas. I think it was in December was the first time this sort of came to be, and so we had this massive underutilized site. Some editorializing there, but it's 80 acres of concrete, and when we looked up and down this corridor, it's underperforming. You can see just the vacant parking stalls, and City asked us to help them visualize the potential for this site, and so what we did is we used SketchUp for the site plan. And just almost like a CAD program, we drew out how this site could be positioned. It is fronting two major streets. So with this simple SketchUp site plan, we placed it into CityEngine. And so we place it in as a KMZ, and I think that's important to note. Collada is the format I think that most people would utilize to go back and forth between 3D products. It's been my experience that KMZ between SketchUp and CityEngine is the best way to do this. So we place this in as a KMZ. The KMZ is geo-referenced, so from SketchUp placing it into CityEngine, it's going to put it into the exact spot on the Earth. And that's important because now with inside of CityEngine, we're able to get map data. So by getting the map data, this aerial photograph comes straight out of CityEngine. It also grabs the street grid for us from OpenStreetMap. And I'll show you the end product as we move through this. So we have this site plan now, and now it's designed for us to really drag and drop rules onto these different colors. So the brown are our buildings, the gray is the asphalt, we have the water in the background, the green is the landscaped areas. The red are the parking rows. The rows are modules of parking. Concrete is that pink, and then we have outlot commercials. And so we go to our CityEngine rules. And so our rule that just drops in parking, we have a rule that just drops in parking lot islands. So if we design the islands inside of SketchUp, we can apply this rule. Otherwise, that rule that we have will put islands in every 8, 10, 15 spaces, however many we want to see. Things like open space or landscaped areas, and this right here shows you the power of procedural modeling. From inside of our rule, we can change the landscape zone from 5 to 7 and instantly becomes tropical. We could change this to any type of landscape region in the world and instantly generate the right plant species. And then lastly, the building. So that detailed building generator I showed you, we're able to drop that in, show a couple of different building forms we generate with that rule. And so taking this site plan, we start to apply our CityEngine rules, and we quickly can generate an image like this. And so CityEngine here is doing most of the work. The SketchUp work was the 2D. The 3D work here is all CityEngine, removing the lines, getting closer to our our finished product that we handled. And you can see in the foreground the streets. That again comes from OpenStreetMap, imported through CityEngine, and then an out-of-the-box rule supplied by Esri for complete streets, just sort of dropped in there to add that traffic. So this technique saved us a ton of time, and we did it for another site for the same city, another sort of aging strip mall. Again, placing that image in as a KMZ. And here you'll see it dropped in with our contextual buildings. So those rules that we've created, we get a lot of mileage out of them. So whether it's commercial, residential, apartment buildings, the contextual model rules help, and then that detailed rule library helps us generate some real detailed 3D content. So at this point, I think we have about 10 rules we call in our rule library for CityEngine that help us quickly get to 3D imagery like this. Another library we have is a SketchUp library, and so we've been, let's see, I've been using SketchUp since it was at Last Software, I think back in 2003, 2004, so over 10 years. And over the course of that, we've assembled a library. This is back in 2004. We were working with the city that we started to take pictures of houses that we knew this community liked and modeled them inside of SketchUp. To the point now we have a pretty massive SketchUp library, hundreds of houses, streetscape furniture, apartment buildings, townhomes, cars, people, and now we're leveraging this library inside of CityEngine. So we could take a house like this that sits inside of our SketchUp libraries and start to place them right into CityEngine. And what's great inside of CityEngine now is we can come in and start to take a zoning ordinance and start to tweak, say, the front yard setback or the side yard setback and the rear yard, and we get that yellow sort of building envelope. And then we can even put in there the mass and how tall should a home or a building be within that area. And then we can replace these with the SketchUp models themselves. So really great, and we're able to now not just to do one parcel, but to be able to generate an entire subdivision. And so walking through this example, we had this site with some vacant land, and the plan we were developing here was stressing that they need to sort of start tying their neighborhoods together as they experience outward growth. So again, starting with pen and paper, just a quick sketch plan. This is on top of just a Google Earth image sketched out. We see the street grid, some of the parcels where we wanted to preserve that green corridor. We georeference that JPEG and we bring it into CityEngine, and we start to draw out our street network. So using CityEngine, we draw the street grid tracing over top of that aerial. And what's great in CityEngine is once you draw a complete or closed loop grid of streets, so here are the streets, it creates a shape in the middle of those called a block. And what you're able to do then with those blocks is start to subdivide them. So using CityEngine to subdivide those parcels. And so now we have the open space areas and the parcels and these areas on the corners that we're going to reserve for commercial. And we're able to apply our rules. And so we have a rule that takes a residential lot, goes into our SketchUp library, and finds out which of the houses we have will fit best on that lot, and it drops it in. So these are all of, basically everything in white is procedural modeled. Anything in color, the houses, are from our SketchUp library. Okay, and then this is the final deliverable that is in the draft plan currently. So again, it's walking through some of the key principles as the city experiences new growth. This is Bentonville, Arkansas. And as they experience new growth, what are some of the key improvements? Connecting the street grid, preserving the corner sites for commercial, key entryways, preserving that greenway and riparian corridors. The last example I'll walk through is some of the architecturally important buildings, or a hero building as it's been called. We've done some work for the city of St. Cloud, Minnesota, and there was this opportunity site in downtown that we highlighted. It was a spillover parking for a church. And this was what we prepared in the document, and then using SketchUp and shader light gave them this. And you can see sort of in the background across the street from this redevelopment site is a church building, and this is the church's spillover parking lot. Well, the church loved the idea of this concept. They were concerned that any development would block the view of their steeple, and they wanted to know if we could develop an interactive model that they could experience and pan around and look at how new development might impact the church. And so the follow-up exercise to this, the church became really one of the principally important buildings. And so the folks over at SketchUp helped us with this, and Chris will walk through this a little later this afternoon here. But this is sort of that church building prepared in SketchUp. And so how do we get this in? Well, this will walk through really now everything that I've covered here today. So one of the things we did, and we had to make changes to the site plan too based on the client feedback. So this is our site plan prepared in SketchUp, dropped into CityEngine. When you do that, this is something I want to highlight here. Off to the right, you'll see the object attributes, and I'll blow it up for you. When you place into KMZ, you're going to see this dialog box. By default, it's going to triangulate all the meshes. It's not going to look like anything like it looked like in SketchUp. And then you're also going to get something called normals, a front side and a back side. And so what I found works best, change your mesh, you want to clean it up, and you want to go to soft normals. And then the end product will look something like this. So it cleans up all of that geometry, merges it nicely for you. So this was one concept the city wanted us to explore, and this was another concept they asked us to explore. And so why we use CityEngine for this was to do a web scene or a 3D web scene, so the church could look and see, you know, what are the impacts of this 5-story traditional building on this site. What if it were an urban building? And what I'll do here is I'll drop in the church that was in our plan, and you can see it there masked out. You can see the steeple, but again, the focus of this assignment was shifting to the church, and so we thought it would be better to put it in as a little more detail. And so there it is with rich detail, as simple as dragging that 3D model right onto your CityEngine scene and placing it wherever you'd like, scaling it if you need to. And so this is a 3D web scene that was given to the city to explore the different development options. And I'll be happy to share a link with anyone if they'd like to see where they can go view this 3D web scene. So everything, the cars, the people on the sidewalks placed in with CityEngine, the church modeled in SketchUp placed in with CityEngine. So with that, Brooks, I'll hand it back to you. Just let everyone know, though, they can contact me on our website, www.housealplanning.com. That's my Twitter account. And I just want to give a thank you to Brooks and Dominic and the people at CityEngine and Chris and everyone at SketchUp. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Devin. Fantastic work, as usual. And time for our next quick audience poll. So our second question, do these workflows resonate with you? Is learning more about how SketchUp and CityEngine, how it's being applied in real world, is what you've seen so far from Devin, the same situations you're going through? So feel free to just pick yes or no.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Brooks, but I think it's an overwhelming yes.
We hit the mark. All right.
Yeah, we're hovering at 80–90% yes. So I think that's a safe bet. We're good.
Great. So our next speaker is joining us from Boulder, Colorado. Chris Dizon is the application engineer with SketchUp, and I will now hand it over to Chris. Take it away.
Thanks, Brooks. Again, one thing, thanks, Devin, for that. All those wonderful graphics, and every time I see those things, I'm blown away by what you and your team are able to do. But again, my name is Chris Dizon, and I'm with the SketchUp team here. And for those who are new to 3D modeling, not familiar with SketchUp, SketchUp's been around since around 2000. It was brought to the public by a company called LS Software, but it's now owned by Trimble Inc. And SketchUp itself is a ubiquitous 3D modeling software that allows designers of pretty much any level to develop 3D models for a multitude of reasons. And we'll go ahead and just, okay. One of the things that really makes SketchUp really popular is the accessibility that it provides. Most people learn SketchUp on their own. They go to their website, they download videos. There's tons of videos on YouTube. So it has a very shallow learning curve relative to other 3D modeling programs. It tends to be very intuitive. We think it's the closest thing to actually true drawing in a 3D environment on a computer. It doesn't work like CAD, and that's the intent. It's more like drawing. Secondly, what makes it really powerful is that it's pretty flexible. You can pretty much create anything you can think of. So there are no set rules on what are the items that this software was designed to produce. It's produced to be very ubiquitous. And it also allows you to use many different techniques to achieve the same model. So it's really up to the designer to leverage his skill sets, and that gives them a lot of flexibility. Okay. So in this part of the webinar, I think I'm just going to cover over actually that hero building. How do I go about creating that structure that's very important to the project? And again, I'm going to be going over the cathedral in St. Cloud, Minnesota, but this may not even be a building. It may be some kind of monument that the city or the client is interested in viewing. So just be aware, again, SketchUp can create anything. And on the screen here, you see a screenshot of the SketchUp as you start up a new file. We don't demand that you start with any kind of template unless you want to. So you can draw straight out of the box without any assets. But we know that many people want to start with a specific asset, a collection of data that they want to start with to help facilitate the drawing process. So SketchUp does provide a multitude of different types of imports, anything from CAD and vector work to some GIS type of imports if you want to have that brought in. And then the big thing in this webinar we're going to be covering is how we deal with imagery or pictures. You know, any kind of raster file, PNGs, JPEGs, just bring them right in. And so with that in mind, what we're going to do is actually use photography to help position buildings and actually use it as a texture to help facilitate the creation of this hero model. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. And here we have an image, excuse me, of an aerial site of that project area. In this case, it's just a standard image. It's been brought in and scaled to the proper size. And I'm going to actually go ahead and align the axis to help facilitate the drawing of using a rectangle tool. Again, this doesn't, you don't have to start with an image. This could be an import of maybe a shapefile of just footprints. It could be CAD data that's brought in of just 2D parcels. It's up to you. But in this case, we're just going to use an image, and I'm going to visually draw a rectangle onto the surface of the raster. If I know the dimensions of this, I could type in the dimensions to be very accurate if I would like. But in this case, I'm just going to draw it out and pop it up using an extrusion tool called push-pull to get my model up to 45 feet. Okay, so that's I believe that's the annex building for the cathedral itself. So it has multiple windows and doors and so forth, but instead of just drawing every single door, I'm actually going to use a photograph taken by a camera and bring it right in to the SketchUp environment as a texture. And I'm just going to apply it straight onto the surface, front surface. I didn't edit the photograph in any way. And you notice that obviously it's not fitting that front facade very well. So I'm going to use another tool. I call it a texture tweaker that allows you to actually, if you imagine the photograph being glued to a rubber sheet, and then you take these pegs and you just jam them right into the rubber sheet, and after they've been positioned according to what I see in the photograph, I can just go ahead and drag those pegs and have them stretched to fit the front of the facade, just like one would do with a rubber sheet. Okay. This helps me, provide a lot of detail to the model without me having to do really anything. It's all in that photograph. Now, if I wanted to add a little bit more detail, I can do so. This is just a texture. So I'm going to go ahead and just, you'll see it's drawing out a rectangle to outline the window. And then I'll just go ahead and push-pull that back. So you can add as much detail that you deem that is needed to help you tell your story, to help communicate the model the way that you want to communicate it, okay, to best communicate and deliver that story to your client. Okay. Another thing that's important to know that anything that you create in SketchUp, or in the model in this case, can be duplicated and reused. So in this case, I am just correcting a little bit of the texture there. Now I'm just going to go ahead and create a component in SketchUp, and we'll call it a window, and I can duplicate that window across my entire model. Okay. This saves me a tremendous amount of time and allows me to be a lot more productive instead of modeling every single element that I see here in the model. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and you'll see in the video here that we're just going to continue to just iterate those components across, adding a little bit more detail. But here we'll go ahead and just add a little bit more by creating the roof. Again, I could be hyper accurate if I wanted to. If I knew the pitch, I could type that in there and actually create the proper pitched roof. But in this case, I'm just going to pull it up just to give it a little bit more nuance. And then we'll go ahead and create the hip roof here. Okay. So here again, this is the building using photography, and this is just the geometry that I've actually created. So for those who are new to 3D modeling, just know that you don't have to know know how to create everything. Just enough to provide a little bit of detail, but let the photographs do most of the work for you. Okay. So in the next step, we're actually going to use a different technique. This is called match photo. I think Devin referred to that a little bit in the webinar. And what we've done is brought in a photograph, and then we've calibrated it, the SketchUp environment, to understand this perspective and how this picture was taken from a camera. Okay, and so those are the alignment bars. And now that this photograph has been aligned in SketchUp, we'll go ahead and use this photograph to actually create the geometry itself. We'll use it as a guide by simply tracing what I visually see. You see here I'm going to be just doing the front facade part, the lower half, to create a surface, and then we'll go ahead and just push this back using a push-pull tool again. Okay, and maybe I want to just, you notice how the side facade there actually juts out a little bit, so I'll create the seam there, and I'll just push-pull this back out to start that. Okay. You can use the photograph to actually figure out the pitch of the roof. Okay. Now developing a model this way isn't going to be, a buildable model, but it's a great way to help communicate what this as-built is when you bring it into your final project. And you notice here that I'm actually just going to take these ends of the front facade, and you notice how the center there pushes back. So I'm letting the imagery help me, guide me in actually creating this facade. And this is all I've done, really, based on the photograph. Using this technique is also a great way to actually do a before and after type of photo. If a client's asking, what would it look like in this photograph if I added a certain element, it's a great way to create those type of images. So again, we'll just take another photograph. This is more of a picture of the front facade. And just like in the other building, I'm going to go ahead and just drape it onto the surface and then use that texture tweaker technique to actually position or remap the image as a texture. And I like also to reiterate, this doesn't have to be a building. It could be anything. One thing that I've seen before is when people take the proposal drawings from architects or from developers. I've seen people take those proposal drawings that are possibly hand-drawn and actually using them as textures. So it doesn't have to be something that's an as-built. You can recreate a proposed development and create a 3D model based on this technique as well, using Texture Tweaker. So there I've applied it to the one surface. I'll go ahead and just sample that, apply it to the other surfaces, and they've been remapped appropriately as well. And the miracle of video, here we are. We'll do the cake out of the oven, and there's your final model. Okay. It's important to note that although the front has very basic modeling detail on it, you can be as detailed as you like. As we rotate around to the back, you'll notice here, just in a few seconds, that we've added a little more detail on the back because perhaps this is something that is of very big interest to the client. You'll see in the back there the level of detail that we've put in, and that's not even a lot of detail. But this can be made of multiple photographs, not just one. So it's as simple as taking a picture. Okay. So that's how that cathedral was done. And we'll go ahead and so we were talking about hero buildings, but it's important to know that, and I think it's been referenced a few times under Devin's side of the part of the presentation, that whatever you use and create in SketchUp can be reused later on and in other projects. So any asset that you have and you think you're going to be using in another model or another project, you can save that in an asset library. Okay, let it be individual collections of things, or maybe sorted out as Devin had shown as a bunch of buildings. It's a great way to facilitate, to make future projects, create those things relatively quickly. And it's important also to note that these objects that you create as assets, you can edit those once they're brought into the model, and they can become derivatives of that, which in line will increase the number of assets that you have. Okay. And in the last point, I think Devin's final images really showed the power of creating a deliverable, and we're glad to see that SketchUp was a part of that, because in SketchUp, along with some rendering engines, you can create some pretty impressive deliverables, let it be graphics. And in this case, here is the Swan Lot project. And this is straight out of SketchUp, but through in this case, I used a rendering engine called TheaRender. We can add a lot more richness and realism to the graphics that I've created. It's also important to note that, in SketchUp, you can get down on the ground and stand at any location and observe and get a good line of sight of how someone standing there would actually see it. So this will give you a lot of flexibility to render the points of view that are very, very important to you and important to the client as well, in order for you to create those 3D deliverables in your project. All right, that's my part of I hope you enjoyed seeing what SketchUp can do, and I really encourage anybody who's new to 3D to jump in, take a look at it, and hope it becomes part of your workflow.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Really impressive stuff. Before we move on, I'll post our next poll. The third question, which 3D software are you currently using today? Are you using SketchUp, or are you using CityEngine, or have you already been attempting to integrate the two and use both? And as we know, there are plenty of 3D tools out there on the market. Are you using others? And Barbary,
Yep.
hand it over to you for the results.
So we've got about 36% using others. SketchUp comes in second, then CityEngine, and several appear using both. So thanks, folks.
Great. Thanks for your responses. Looks like we have some solid SketchUp and CityEngine users here on the webinar. So I'd like to quickly summarize a great place to get started today. Using SketchUp for your hero building, whether it's an existing building or a proposed project, is very powerful. And leveraging CityEngine for the generation of your context, pulling in map data, generating cities automatically with the rules, combining this with SketchUp really gives you a combo that will shred the total time you spend on modeling in 3D, especially at this scale. CityEngine is an important component of ArcGIS and its 3D platform. It works with ArcGIS Online, connecting to data through your login, and integrating with other apps, such as Drone2Map. Drone2Map is a relatively new software that allows you to quickly process still imagery collected by drones, your own drone, and you're able to process into 3D mesh and point clouds. CityEngine also works alongside Pro, Esri's core GIS application for desktop, with the ability to write a rule in CityEngine and apply it in ArcGIS Pro. We also have ArcGIS Earth, and as the name implies, this can support many disconnected viewing workflows. And finally, web scenes and apps that can be built easily with Web App Builder can start to support 3D in a commercial web browser. As you can see, CityEngine is part of a family of apps supporting a wide variety of targeted workflows. So let's take a dive further into 3D web scenes. One of the big industry challenges, as you've seen so far in the webinar, is to take complex planning data, stories at the end of the day, and present these to end users who have limited to no knowledge of planning or design. With 3D web scenes, you can create a welcoming environment for both internal staff as well as the public, streamlining the review of projects and plans. We also see the web browser as the best medium for reaching elusive demographics that don't always show up to a community workshop or an event. Being able to create a web scene and email out a simple link to one of these very immersive scenes is powerful. So for this, I'm going to transition to the web browser here and give you an idea of what this looks like. So web scenes are similar to web maps. What you have is the entire world alongside all of the base maps that Esri provides, such as imagery, topographic base maps, and these base maps are draped over a global terrain service, a height map, that allows you to have a starting place, but also allows you to drop in your own digital elevation models and create and manage your own city. So with this example here, we're looking at a very low detail, untextured model with representations for trees. This is a great model for actually displaying projects like we've been discussing. So if I search in here for a quick tag, after publishing these layers, I can actually access them just by searching my ArcGIS Online account. And I can add a project, in this case, a small skyscraper, to the scene. This would load in and stream in dynamically. If you've tried the web scenes in the past, usually these are static in nature, and these new web scenes fully leverage the streaming capability of online. So once we have a building in there, we can create a slide, and we can actually always jump back to that point. Let's add some more data and start to tell a story. So if I go back and I add some trolley line information, and maybe I want to switch the base map so I have those pop out a little bit more, I can start to tell the story of that project and how it relates to the surrounding trolley stations. In this case, I'll add in the trolley stations. And these trolley stations that you see added as small blue icons, they've been enriched. So they have a lot of data already on them, but we've enriched them with our demographic information on Esri's ArcGIS Online. And what we've done is append the total population in 2021, for example. So one of the brand new capabilities of these web scenes is the ability to take that type of information in that layer and use that to drive not only 2D representations, but 3D charting capabilities. We call this smart mapping, and you might be familiar with it in our 2D web maps. But in 3D, we're able to take very complex data, demographic data, and other attributed information, and start to represent these dynamically in 3D. You have a small histogram here, which allow you to change the overall relevance of the symbology, and I can click Done. And in this case, I can save another slide. So by telling the story of here's San Diego, here's our new project, and here's the overall existing transportation around the project, it allows us to start piecing together this narrative. And to build on what Devin and Chris were both showing earlier, this is, for example, a web scene of that same exact project that we were showing. So even these buildings can have attributes, and they can have more information that can be called up at will. So apart from just web scenes, CityEngine users are also very interested in virtual reality and would like to quickly immerse into their 3D scenes to review designs. To showcase urban redevelopment to the public, CityEngine users like the City of Zurich are looking to provide simple VR scenes. This is supposed to be easy to use, easy to set up. So being able to one-click publish from CityEngine to virtual reality is a must, and being able to use existing mobile VR solutions like the Oculus Gear VR from Samsung is preferable to requiring high-end computers with game engine technology, right? So ArcGIS 360 VR is an app that you can use with your Samsung Gear, which now I believe comes with a new Samsung phone. We've included the bit.ly here in case you would like to try it out today. So ArcGIS 360 VR does not require complicated 3D data workflow that involves complex game engines. You just need to be able to set bookmark viewpoints in CityEngine or use existing ones that already exist in your projects and export a VR experience. It takes all the bookmarks and packages them up with your scenarios. This can then be uploaded to ArcGIS Online and can be searched for in the Samsung Gear headset and viewed. This is easy. It's a focus on easy-to-use virtual reality, enabling anyone to be able to use it to get buy-in, for example, for the next project. Here's a great example from the City of Zurich. And you can see placing the observer on location, immersing them in the 3D world is a very powerful idea. You can cycle between different bookmarks. Here we can go actually inside the neighboring building to this scenario represented by the yellow mass. And you can cycle through different scenarios themselves, which are a combination of layers that you can customize before you export. So we'd like to actually put up one more poll. So this is very helpful for us. In the next 6 months, are you planning to use web or VR to tell your story? So just a quick yes or no. And Barbary, do we have a total?
Actually, the consensus is at 60% yes.
Okay.
Very cool.
Great. Yeah, very cool. All right, so now with the remaining time, I'd like to give everyone a sneak peek into the new redesigned CityEngine 2017. So allow me to again hop out of PowerPoint, and I will open up CityEngine. CityEngine 2017 has been completely redesigned from the user interface all the way to adding new features such as scenarios. Scenarios allow you to, rather than a traditional method of keeping track of your scenarios through layers, you're able to actually cycle through scenarios that automatically filter with the same layers, different alternatives. This allows you to, in this case, add a new viewport and see side-by-side comparison of existing and proposed. We also have improved dashboarding as well as the ability to measure. We added a brand new measuring tool that allows us to click, for example, anywhere on the map and measure, let's measure the height of this building from across the street. You'll see a laser line going across the model. This is what we call it. And this would allow you to very quickly see how that is represented across the model itself. Very easy to use measuring tool for length. We also have area measuring. So if I wanted to very quickly understand, for instance, the area of that road, I can calculate that out. And this is 3D measuring. So if I was to drag up one side, drag it out, you can see that even with a 3D shape, I'm able to calculate total area in the 2D representation. Very powerful tools. And to show you more, what I'm going to do is take a look at one bookmark here. We've also added in what we call local edits. Devin had previewed just before some handles that are very helpful in taking a procedural rule that you've coded in CityEngine, and instead of opening up the inspector and changing the height right here, what we're able to do is actually utilize these handles directly in the scene to do so. Now, before CityEngine, when you were adjusting the handle of one window, for example, it would affect all windows. And now what we've done is implemented local edits. What local edits means is that you can select one window and I can adjust that one window. Or I can select an entire row. Let's change the width here. Add a balcony. And let's adjust this row, for example, a little bit skinnier. And you can see with adjustments, and if I exit local edits, I'm still able to keep the procedural nature of my building. Very powerful in actually diving in and designing individual details of the particular building, such as a window, which in the past has been, almost impossible with procedural language. We're also adding more assets. An example of this asset would be a fence example. Here we go, and we'll zoom into our fence. We're adding new rules to our default rule library, like fences, that allow you to change, for instance, to a rope fence, a residential fence, or even the Berlin Wall itself. So I promise not to have any Trump jokes here, but I can't help myself. And we have traffic cones and all sorts of fences. So if you're interested in learning more about the fence rule, it will come pre-packaged in CityEngine 2017 when available. So from here, I can take my model, I can select it, and I can go File, Export 360 VR Experience, or export models to a variety of formats, such as KML, or any other format that other 3D tools generally speak to. We also have Get Map Data. That was a feature that was released in the previous version of CityEngine. And as Devin mentioned, it's a great way to actually bring in existing map data to get started with your plan. So with that, here are some important dates for our upcoming CityEngine 2017 release. We welcome everyone to sign up on our early adopter page and try out the beta coming up in a couple weeks. I have April, but we're hopeful for late March as the official beta release. Test it out, let us know what you think. We hope you enjoyed the webinar today and found the topics covered very useful. Let me summarize with some key pointers on how to get started. We don't expect you to do all of this all right away. The software and workflows are accessible to learn, and we hope this webinar has given you a good idea of where to define your first quick win. To help even further, we'd like to put up our last poll. And Barbara, if you don't mind, and quickly offer for the first 10 folks on the webinar today a quick 15-minute consulting slot. So let us know if you're interested. We'd be happy to talk further about your own projects and help you get started with some of these workflows. All right. Thank you very much. And so we'd like to open it up now for questions. I know there's not much time remaining. Might be a little bit over, but I'll hand it over to you, Barbara.
Okay, so quickly to Devin, where are you going with the workflows and what is next?
I think, well, we're using 3D a lot more, and so I think there's still a place for plan view graphics. But what these tools have allowed us to do is start to bring recommendations into 3D, and so those types of imagery, I think, resonate a little better with the general audience and the general public, and then on top of that, we're able to use things like VR and the web scenes to allow people to almost experience our recommendations as opposed to just viewing them. And as we develop, say, a land use plan, we can move, instead of just a simple land use, to something like a place type, where we can start to show what places look like in the communities that we're planning for, and be able to see the data in addition to the visual. And so it's where we're headed.
Excellent. So Brooks, has the 360 VR app been used with a customer yet? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we use it all the time at Esri just to show off some of these great models we have. A great user case would be, for instance, the city of Nashville has a great story about using it to display, for example, the changes to Main Street if they were to have parking day. Parking day is a concept of not allowing cars to park for a day or an afternoon, and allowing cafe tables to be set up and installed, sort of like a market night. Being able to use 360 VR as a way to immerse maybe skeptical internal staff or the public in this concept has been an effective way of getting buy-in for these types of events. And I would like to hand it over to Devin. I think you told me about an example as well, Devin.
Yeah, we've used it. The example I had talked about, that subdivision, our client was here in our office, and so we after demoing the VR headset at the Geodesign Summit in Redlands, came back here and purchased, and setting up a VR scene is that simple, as Brooks walked through it. So we took that Bentonville subdivision and created the VR scene and had our client here sort of step into the recommendations.
Great.
So Brooks, and we've had so many questions, and folks, thank you. Keep sending those in. We will share everything with the good folks here at Esri and SketchUp and Devin's group as well. Where is the best place to find data?
The
Lots of data questions out there.
data. Yeah. No, that's that's never an easy question to answer. I mean, the nice thing is there's a trend in government now, both at the city and county and even regional level, to make GIS data available through open data sites. And we, alongside other Esri partners, are starting to implement these open data portals that allow you to have access to available 3D data. There's also a good LiDAR repository, or rather point cloud repository, on the USGS website that gives you an idea of the total coverage nationwide here in the US for the 3D data. But really, I would start off with, based on where your project is, go to the City GIS website and see what's available and start there. We also have a lot of data sets that are in OpenStreetMap or in ArcGIS Online that you can actually pull straight into CityEngine now.
So speaking of CityEngine, What formats does CityEngine handle? I know we've, across the webinar, we've touched on several of these things, but maybe if we can zone in for several folks. There have been so many questions about data formats.
Sure. Yeah, and Chris, you covered it for SketchUp pretty well. And I would say it's exactly the same as what Chris had up on the screen for SketchUp, in that you're able to pull in CAD, you're able to pull in Collada, OBJ, FBX, geodatabase, shapefiles, right, etc. And the nice thing about CityEngine, as well as SketchUp, is the ability to export to those same exact formats that you can import. So interoperability is key in 3D software in general, and we focus on providing the best, more up-to-date formats. So our FBX format, for instance, is up-to-date, so you can pull in your CAD as easy as you might think.
Cool.
Actually, I see a question here as well about whether or not it's if it's capable of. Let's see. Can you publish a web scene for a whole city to a web page and expect to get decent performance? I just wanted to touch on that, if you don't mind. The new web scenes are a lot different than traditional web scenes. That we even had a CityEngine web scene, and we still support this. But these web scenes that you're maybe familiar with are limited in scale and size. And with this newer web scene, you're able to publish these 3D layers from ArcGIS Pro, from drone to map. When it comes to point clouds and mesh, those can be published to ArcGIS Online. And CityEngine, you can publish 3D to ArcGIS Online. So by doing that, what you're able to do is stream them in based on where you're looking in the web scene. So the content loads dynamically, enabling you to publish the entire city, and complete with trees and all sorts of objects. So yes, I would say test it out for yourself.
Good. Well, let's remind folks when the release is coming out.
Yeah, sure. So the beta release for 2017 is coming out at the end of the month, or early April, we would say. And we can look forward to the full release this summer in July for the Esri user conference. But we'll be posting a recording of this video. I know I might have gone quickly through the slides to make sure we use everyone's time wisely, and we'll pass that recording out to everyone on the webinar.
Absolutely, and we'll have that up on our website as well. So, folks, if you want, click the little camera button on your webinar box there in the upper right corner, and you can save those web links. We'll also be sharing those with you via email along with the recording when that's ready to go. Thanks again for your time today. We appreciate our talented gentlemen sharing these really cool developments in 3D and city planning and those sorts of things. If you need a certificate, do let us know. We'll give you that information in the email as well. And we hope to see you again in another Directions webinar. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.